Can music change the conversation about the climate crisis? Can a magazine or a radio show play a role in reconnecting us to nature? Those are the big questions that around 5,000 people from the ad industry have been trying to answer. They've created an agency for nature that represents the interests of nature, and an organisation called Purpose Disruptors are who we're going to meet today. They have done something which really tickled me and the person that I am. They created a fanzine about Goths in nature. And as you'll learn through this conversation, the process of making this involved a radio show with a musician and poet called Freya Beer. The legend that is Chris Packham is also involved in this project, and he shared some of his tips and advice and music recommendations. The whole thing has just got this wonderful resonance. I think what Goths represent is a subculture that's really defined, but actually quite hard to define, and I might have a go at that in the outro to this episode. And I really like what they've made with this magazine. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from the process. And on this series of the Drown in Sound podcast, we are meeting change makers, understanding how change happens. I'm also going to be meeting pioneering musicians and sort of looking forward to the year 2050. I really want to understand how we change things. And I really want to understand why someone made a fanzine about Goths in nature to make sense of addressing or illuminating this topic. They've also done projects with grassroots football, with drag artists, and I think there was a fashion project. There's all sorts of things they've been doing, and so there's a really interesting set of ideas and ideals and concepts. If you're watching this on YouTube rather than listening to the podcast, I'm going to share some little video bits now of what the magazine looks like whilst listening to this bit of the radio show. I can tell you that Freya looks iconic. She has an amazing goth fringe, and she's also a poet and musician. She's a really interesting character. I've been looking her up whilst doing my research on this podcast. You will be able to download this Fresh Hell magazine as a PDF, and I will link to that in the show notes and on drowninsound.org because I think it's great. I already linked to it a few weeks ago if you're a regular reader of the newsletter. And I think that if you can, take this podcast for a walk in the woods or in a park, or go sit somewhere in your garden and listen to it. I think the studies that show the benefits of being in nature is exactly what this episode is all about. Let's give you a little taste of what the radio show sounds like. This is Freya Beer and Lyra Valencia, who describes herself as a nature influencer. Her Instagram account is great. I will link to that in the show notes. This is them introducing a conversation that Freya has with Chris Packham.
So Lyra, how would you describe Chris Packham?
I mean, I'm super jealous because he's like the Beyonce of wildlife TV. I think he would hate me saying that. But yeah, he's super inspirational. I grew up watching him on wildlife shows, Spring Watch in particular. So,
yeah, same.
Super cool. Does a lot of good campaigning, and yeah, just incredible. Does incredible work.
Yeah. So like, I don't know if you knew this, but I definitely didn't know this, but Chris was a hardcore punk.
See, I didn't know
in his early years. Yeah, and he's actually kindly shared some thoughts on what nature means to him, both now and then when he was a punk.
Cool.
So I had the opportunity to catch up with Chris and ask him some questions, and yeah, enjoy these questions and answers by Chris Packham. And also, he's suggested some of his favourite tracks, which reminds him of his youth and, you know, nature as well. So enjoy. So Chris, as a punk in the 80s, what role did nature play for you?
In many ways, punk rock was an outlet. It allowed me to identify myself as being different than other people. And I hadn't yet realised why I was different from other people as an undiagnosed neurodiverse young person. But nature was very different. Nature was where I went to escape the pressures of the world that I couldn't cope with. Because when I went into the woods, into the fields, you know, I was on my own, and therefore there was nothing to judge me against. And I felt more complete. I felt more comfortable. And although I thought that I went there to, study all of the things that fascinated me most, in fact, with the benefit of hindsight, I realised that I was going there to reduce my anxiety and find some calm away from the storm that was my teenage life. Picking a punk tune, even from that period, is so difficult. There were so many brilliant ones, but one that I've been listening to recently, which is a perennial favourite, is "Where Were You" by the Mekons.
Sadly, due to music rights, I cannot play that whole song, but what I can do is link you to the delightful hour-long radio show that Freya Beer hosted. It's available on Mixcloud. It will be in the show notes and an article on drowningsound.org. That gives you a taste of what the radio show sounds like. Let's find out about the magazine that was inspired by this show and this whole process. This is a conversation with Aimee Brewerton, who I used to sit a few desks away from at the BBC, and I've been following what she's been doing with Purpose Disruptors, found it really, really interesting, really inspiring. And when she shared that they just made a goth zine, I was like, in nature, that sounds very much like my thing. So we'll also meet Andrew and Nicole, the designer and writer of the magazine. They share a little bit about the creative process and what it was like to kind of research and develop this idea, who they were trying to connect with, how they were connecting with them. And I think if you are trying to understand how to make change, how to connect an idea to people, how to develop a concept, this is a really great conversation. And I hope you will agree. Enjoy. If we carry on as we are and hit fast forward, what will the world be like in 2050?
Big question. Well, first of all, nothing is set in stone yet. So I think we've got to think about things in terms of scenarios. So if we carry on business as usual, if we carry on with what we're doing in terms of extracting resources, consuming in the way that we do. I mean, literally like the way that we consume in the West. I mean, in the UK, we would need 3 planets to keep up with the demand of consumption. In the US, it's 5, which is outrageous. The world will not look like an amazing place that it is at the moment, well, at least in part. And so I think the easiest way to think about this is like, what would you be looking at? What if you're looking outside your window, what would you be experiencing? What would you be feeling? And the biggest thing that I think is really interesting that people don't really think about is like mass movement. So 2 billion people in the world will be on the move, minimum, if not more. That is with like a 2-degree Celsius rise. So for people that aren't as familiar with climate science, essentially we set a Paris Agreement and it was like, we do not want the planet to heat more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. If we do, from pre-industrial levels, if we do, then we're kind of screwed and the world starts unraveling. And there's different tipping points, like glaciers start melting, or, we're acidifying the ocean, or and yeah. So we think about like, what is our lived reality? It will be water wars, mass movement, food shortages, depleted nature. And even now, since the 70s, we've lost like 73% of wildlife has gone literally since the 70s. Like it is kind of unraveling in front of our eyes already. And so yeah, it's pretty critical.
Sounds lovely. Shall I kind of go on holiday there now?
Yeah, sorry. I'll start with the joy, start with the jolly stuff.
That's what I wanted to get out of the way early so we can talk about other things. But it is that thing of people talk about climate change and it's easy because it's 2 words and it feels small and it disappears. Yeah. But the reality is, without that sense of what it could be, I don't think it's easy to understand why people act and react the way that they do. And I'm very conscious of about 10 years ago, I saw a PowerPoint presentation that most PowerPoint presentations are pretty dull. And I just saw someone just talk me through, this is what is going to happen. And to think that last summer, some scientists thought we hit the 1.5 already. And again, 1.5 sounds like a tiny number. If you cook some in the oven at 180 or 200, it doesn't make that much difference. But when it's the entire planet and it's warmer, everything's warmer than your body temperature, that's when things get scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just think, and the margins are crazy. I mean, so we've been living in the Holocene, so 11,000 years, we've had this insane stability, and now we're kind of tinkering with the numbers and what we're putting into the atmosphere in a way like never before. And so what's kind of more scary, I guess, in a way, is like we actually have no idea about how a lot of stuff is going to unfold because we've never really seen this before. Something that we hosted a summit very recently, and actually one of the really interesting things was to sort of bring to life on the ground here in London, one of the things that we'll see potentially if things continue as they are. The Thames barrier was built to keep water out of London. But actually that is being, the amount of times in which the Thames barrier is actually put up to block that river is like way more than they anticipated. And also it's used to let water out when there's an excess of water coming into the London water system. So basically there'll be a situation where there's high tide and we need to keep the sea out, but there's also shitloads of water in central London because we've had high rainfall. And what do you do in that situation? That is like crazy flooding like we've never seen before, and it's not that unrealistic.
The next question is really the kind of like who you are one, because we sort of skipped the small talk at the start. Could you tell my listeners a little bit about what Purpose Disruptors is and why it exists?
Yes, I can, absolutely. So I'm Aimee. I'm the comms and community lead at Purpose Disruptors. Had a kind of career in marketing at the BBC, did a master's in sustainability ecology, moved to this wonderful organisation, Purpose Disruptors, which is it's a global nonprofit. And really what we're trying to do is change the story of advertising so it works in harmony with the natural world. And that sounds maybe kind of a bit, I don't know, sort of random in a way, but actually when you start thinking about advertising and its role in our society, it's a massive lever for change. And it's also currently a massive part of the problem. So at the moment, consumerism is almost one of these the spotlight on consumerism in the climate crisis is not very bright. It's a kind of a hidden away thing, but it's actually one of the most fundamental parts of why we're in the pickle that we're in. The more we consume, the more energy that gets used, the more resources that gets used, the more pollution, the more waste, the more everything. And actually, obviously, advertising is a key part in driving those behaviors and making us want more. And so we founded Purpose Disruptors to essentially completely shift that. So what would the industry look like if it didn't exist to fuel runaway consumption? What might we do? What might people do? And there's so many amazing, amazing, amazing humans in the industry who are desperate to make change happen, who want to continue being creative and strategic and, work with other wonderful people doing brilliant things, but not necessarily driving the behaviors that the industry drives.
And it's a huge industry. I looked it up, and last year there was $1 trillion spent, and in the UK it was 40 billion, and like in one quarter it went over 10 billion for the first time. Like that is, it was something like 1 point something % of the UK GDP is just advertising. And obviously the music industry, YouTube, Spotify, all these places full of advertising to fund music. I ran a music website, sponsored, advertised. Most journalism is backed by advertising. And I don't think it will shock anyone to realize how central it is to the creative economy more than anything else. Would you like to introduce me to your compadres who joined us today?
Absolutely. So we are joined by the wonderful Nicole Vanner and Andrew Hadley at the agency Iris. So they're creatives and copywriters at the agency Iris. And we've been working together on one of the most wonderful projects that exists, I think, in the world. So at Purpose Disruptors, we created an agency for nature. So it's an agency which helps young people fall in love with nature and helps fix our broken relationship with nature. And yeah, I'll let you guys actually do a bit of the talking.
Yeah, so I guess it's giving you a background of how we sort of got to know the agency for nature. But about 3 months ago, we were invited to this amazing day at Walthamstow Wetlands, where we were briefed kind of to what Aimee just said of the in short of how do you get young people who may be sort of slightly disassociated with nature, maybe a little more focused on TikTok? Like, if we're being honest, how do you get a subculture within that age group interested in nature again and out there? And then Nicole and I went on a walk around Walthamstow, and we looked at a goose fighting a cat. We spotted all the mushrooms.
Who won?
I mean, it remains to be seen. I think there's a big face-off coming soon. So
That's the new bear versus shark, isn't it? A goose versus a cat.
I'll send you a link to a weird stream in due course. That we came up with all these ideas, and we thought like of the subcultures that we're involved in. I mean, for me, it's like it's trail running and running of all forms. Like, that's what I know about. That's what I love. And for you,
Yes, my main. I just love natural influences in illustration, and I always love flowers and everything. So
initially I think we had 10 or 12 routes that actually felt quite safe. For us, we were like, oh, we can do that. We can do that. Like, in a couple of days, and we'll make a thing, and that'll be that. And then our creative director just really, really pushed us to like get out of our comfort zone. And one thing, this key thought that we just couldn't get out of our heads was the idea of a goth in nature. And I think there's just that initial contrast between sort of dark, somber colors and sort of nature's natural way. And we just thought that was initially interesting. And when we sort of like got into it and really like dove in, and like spoke to people about it, everyone's like, that's amazing. That is like that, honestly, like that initial thought that, well, got us inspired was the hook for everybody else.
yeah, and it was a really interesting thing to like kind of not have a client. Like our client was nature, and then that was just really real free reign to be as creative as possible. And then when we started on that wild, unkept side of nature and the link with goth culture, it really became easy and lovely from then on.
Yeah, and what's really nice about Iris is we are quite we're quite a big team, which means there's quite a lot of, well, we hope quite a lot of diversity across the team. So we reached out to everybody we knew, and we were put in touch with amazing people within the community. And one of my favorite things was I went for 6 pints with a goth.
Cider?
No, Guinness, the dark.
Okay, Guinness.
So basically stood around a barrel, and I asked all the obvious questions, all the silly questions, all the stupid questions. Got so much information, so many references, and so many other people reached out. So like I would never say that we're a part of the subculture, but in terms of an accelerator into understanding a little bit more about goth and where it sits next to dark wave, next to punk, was like completely invaluable and completely fascinating. And hopefully Bexy doesn't mind being name checked. One of the things she said was like, the true origin of goth is about like being an outsider. And by the sounds of it, you're trying to get outsiders outside. And we were like, can we steal that? Please, can we? And I mean, we have stolen it and completely kept
and now
it.
you've credited it, so it's not stolen.
Because it's on the on that bit of our zine. But I guess so we'll take you on to sort of the full circle moment. So we started in Walthamstow, we went and explored, we were told to get out of our comfort zones, we got out of them. So then we were like, what do we make? And when we were discussing the problem, and we kind of saw it from Walthamstow, it's kind of ironic because you're in this green space but you can see London.
Yeah.
You can see 25, 30-story apartment buildings, which, you know, if you're 25 floors up in an apartment block, you're very much not in nature. So we're like, this is weird. How do we get someone halfway up a building into nature? And then we thought, oh, well, where was it? It was in the bird hide, right? With Nadine. So we were in this bird hide with this bird watching influencer as part of our briefing day.
Yeah.
And we thought, like,
I love the fact that even bird watching's got influencers now.
I mean, yeah,
Cool.
it is kind of wild, but yeah,
The new Bill Oddie.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's amazing.
So
knowledgeable.
like, yeah, Nadeem just was partly hosted our day with the Agency for Nature, like our briefing day, and was just an incredible, like, wealth of knowledge. But we were having this briefing in this bird hide. And for the listeners, a bird hide is a glorified shed. But it's where you go and you can see nature, like mainly birds, across the water in Walthamstow. And yeah, just at the back of our minds, we were thinking, like, this is a really interesting space. And we settled on an idea, but then we thought the idea would never get made because the person we wanted to do it would never say yes. So from research, from reading articles, from going for drinks and interviews, we found Freya Beer, who is on the cover of our zine, but we'll talk about in a bit. Freya Beer is not only the most collaborative, positive person I think we've ever come across, but is an amazing Gothic artist, poet, musician, and also she has her own radio show, a monthly radio show, Freya Beer's Gothic Disco. And we found it, we listened to it. She's worked with some amazing people. She's like deep sort of in the subculture. And we were like, she's perfect. Like she's the perfect person, but she won't say yes. I remember it was the last day of school at Iris, 23rd of December, about 4 p.m. on a Zoom call, like with about eight floating heads on screen, everyone at home. And we were just talking to Freya, telling her about the project. And we got halfway through, I think like 3 slides of 6. And she was like, yeah, I'm in. And it meant that, like, in the new year, so this year, 2025, we were able to record her January episode of Freya Beer's Gothic Disco live from that Walthamstow Wetlands bird hide. So it was kind of a full circle moment for us because, well, it felt new, it felt different. And for her regular listeners who might be listening at those 20 plus floors up in their apartment buildings, they at least had a little snippet of nature in their ears, even if they weren't. And it makes you think about those scenarios where you're so far from nature, even though you're so close. So one for me is like the Tube. So you could be 200 feet below Hyde Park. Nature's above you. You're very much not in nature, but at least, like, if you've got your headphones in and you're listening to something, it's at least a semblance of nature. And there's this lovely moment. I mean, I'm sure we can send you an excerpt from the podcast where Freya and we'll talk about the guests that were on the show as well in a second. But like, Freya makes space for just the sounds of nature, and we just hear the sounds of Walthamstow Wetlands, and like,
it's the best sound bed ever.
It's the most eclectic because it was like the sound of an Egyptian goose, a Canada goose, a coot, and then a plane. So it's like the real sort of
reversing cover there as well at some point.
So yeah, like a real smorgasbord.
Urban nature.
Exactly, fresh out.
Welcome back to Freya Beer's Gothic Disco on Islington Radio. That was A Forest by The Cure. So I'm here with Lyra Welcome back, Lyra.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Enjoying everything we're seeing and hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool.
Such a great view
I
in
know.
comparison to like my usual office.
It's so different. It must be a bit strange.
Yeah. So before the Cure song, we were chatting about how beneficial it is for young people and, to be honest, everyone to be outside in nature. Like, what are your views on that?
Yeah, I think it's good for people's mental health, especially now, like especially the younger generation. We're very, including me, glued to our phone. Everything's on the phone, and I think nature's a good way to kind of break that cycle. Sometimes when I find myself like doom scrolling, I'm like, Lyra, like get off your phone, just step outside. And it does feel better, even when you need to push yourself and do it. You know, the last thing you want to do sometimes is go for a walk when you're cozy in bed scrolling on your phone.
Yeah, it's so hard.
It is so hard.
It's ridiculously
Yeah.
hard how like you can't stop.
Yeah.
Like especially apps like TikTok, where it's just constant content, and it's just through like a flick of your finger.
Yeah, it's addictive. It's addictive.
Very addictive,
And I think it's damaging a lot of our mental health. There's a huge mental health crisis, especially amongst young people. And we've always known, and it's scientifically proven, that nature makes us feel better, makes us feel good. It's free, it's accessible. So why not use it?
It's free.
Exactly. We're sitting here for free. I love it.
Exactly.
I love it.
So let's set the scene, Lyra.
Yeah.
So we're in North London. We have a great view in front of us.
I know.
A lot of activity going on.
I know. Freya, what do you see? Like, what can you see? Tell me what you think you see.
I see a seagull.
Yes, they are gulls. There's different species of gulls. So these ones in particular, I'll tell you something really interesting.
Okay.
These are called black-headed gulls. And at the moment, their head is fully white. But can you see that they have these like black patches near where their ears would be?
Yeah.
That's because in the summer, their head turns completely black. And then in the winter, it turns back to white, just leaving a bit of black patch on their head. So those are black-headed gulls. Their heads change colour in the summer, which is crazy.
But do you know like the reason for that?
It's cool. So birds do this thing in breeding season, which is in the summer, where they change their plumage, so their feathers, to make themselves look more attractive, to attract mates. And these species, the black-headed gulls, apparently changing their head colour is really, really impressive. Wow. And it is. It takes a lot of energy. So yeah, both males and females do it.
Oh, interesting. Because usually it's the male.
Exactly.
Because you find that, like, I think a lot of animals, the females are always very dull colours.
Yes, but in this species in particular, they do it. So yeah, really, really interesting. So that, often people just look out and think, oh, those are just gulls. But no, they're black-headed gulls, and they do a really cool thing in the summer. And really loud. You'll probably hear them screaming at each other. They're the loudest gull species, really loud. And then we've got some geese here. Can you see those two?
Yeah.
Have you seen those before? Those two right there. Can you see? They're just
oh
swimming
yeah,
over.
yeah. They look familiar.
Yeah, they're called Canada geese. They're really like Canada.
Oh, cool.
People are like, are they from Canada? But you find them like all over Europe. I think originally they were like from that part of the world, and then they're brought over because they look really pretty. But you find them all over Europe now. So yeah, super. There's lots of birds around. I saw some parakeets over there, which is that really bright green parrot that we have in London.
Yeah.
Have you seen them?
Yeah, I have.
Or heard them?
There's a lot, because I'm based in Ealing, so there's a lot of parakeets in Ealing, I've noticed. But I don't know the exact story, but I think they escaped.
See, no one really knows. There's all these theories. Yeah, apparently
it's
escaped
a
from
theory,
that coast.
okay.
Yeah, there's lots of different theories. But they've made home here now, and they're like super abundant. I love them. There's a big
love them,
some people hate them. It's like a hate or love thing.
But they're so colourful. It's just so nice to see like a pop of colour.
Right, and they're so loud as well. I just love it. They just express themselves. Just super cool.
It's like, we've arrived.
Exactly. And then there's that bird you asked about earlier. Can you see that one, the black bird that kind of looks like the Loch Ness monster?
Oh yeah.
And Freya, it's giving me your energy, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's just sleek, it's cool, it's like, it's got presence. A little bit shy, so it dives away sometimes and it pops back up.
Right.
I'm here.
Right.
That's you know that one.
Yeah, I know that one.
What is it?
Yeah.
What is it, Freya? Tell us.
A cormorant.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's as far as my knowledge goes, guys.
No, that's good. That's more than a lot of people. So lots. I mean, look, within a few minutes, we've identified like 5 or more species, and we're not even moving. We're just sitting still in this bird hide.
Yeah.
You and me.
Yeah, I know. So really quick, there's one on the green over there. Blackbird.
Oh yeah, that is a Moor Hen.
Oh,
so
Moor Hen.
it kind of
Yeah,
looks
I've heard
like
of those.
a chicken, but
Right.
all black.
It's a Goth chicken.
Literally, it's a Goth chicken. And they're super cool. It actually has, if you also use your binoculars and you zoom in, on its head it has like a really red face, like a red... Oh my gosh, like bright red lipstick, all black. It's a Goth chicken.
It's me.
Yeah, literally. And I love them. They're a bit loud. Sometimes they like to fight.
Right.
They're a bit like, they're very territorial. In spring and summer, you'll see them fighting it out with each other for space. But over there, it's just chilling, just eating little worms. Yeah, that's a Moor Hen. Good
Nice.
spot. That's a nice find.
Yeah, interesting. So let's just get back to the music for a minute, and then we're gonna go back to the birds after this next track. So this next track is by the iconic band Sisters of Mercy, who are also one of my favorites. One of the first bands I discovered when I was like exploring the world of goth when I was a teenager. So yeah, this band is really important to me. So the song is called Never Land a Fragment.
And how did it jump from being a radio show into a zine? In fantastic green on the cover, which feels sort of almost like there's somewhere there's an overlap between evergreen and toxic green, isn't there? It's like,
Yeah, we definitely thought it would be lovely to make something physical, because we felt like from our day in Walthamstow Wetlands, it's so visceral, the experience of nature, and that's part of why it's so calming and great for mental health. And then we were thinking, oh, if we're making something that we listen to, it'd be great to have something physical that you can touch and immerse yourself that way as well. And then the zine, yeah, is based off of the podcast, the radio recording that we did, and also some extra fun bits in there that Hadders wrote himself, and also, yeah, another person we work with, Callum Ritchie. Yeah, so there's some interesting stuff in there, including a poem from Freya Beer, which was really nice, and also How to Birdwatch in 1984 from Chris Packham, who was our special guest also on the radio show. And he helped us, yeah, with an article in the zine as well. So yeah, it's got some fun stuff in there.
I think also
what was Chris like when he came?
Yeah, well, sadly, he wasn't there in the flesh.
Oh, okay.
But he answered some questions that yeah, Freya sent him, and yeah, he also played some of his favorite songs.
I'd say that like what was great about Chris Packham is that like he wasn't there on the day, but like I feel like he more than made up for it with his general enthusiasm for the project. So we reached out to him and he was like, oh, I was a punk in the 80s. I'm still kind of punk now. Do you want some photos? And we were like, there are photos? And he sent us like original photos of him. And I mean, we made this thing and we love it, but they are really like iconic, stunning things. And then he recommended songs which were related to him and his sort of own experiences, which were like very, very just it was just really, really him in everything that he sent us. And then we sent him some zines and said, would you mind signing a couple for us? Because, you know, we're big fans and you've been amazing. And not only did he do that, but he sent us a handwritten letter back and then posted on his channels, on his Instagram, which has, I think it's almost 1 million followers, which he didn't have to do. And he's just like, it elevated everything. So even though he couldn't be there, he went above and beyond. And
he was haunting the projects, probably.
Yeah.
or whatever with Goths haunt, that's technically like the undead. So
It was just really a lovely link with obviously his connection to spring watch and bird watching, and then Freya Beer and the podcast Bird Watching, and then the book, we have an article as well about murders near you, about crow spotting. And it just feels really like he was meant to be a part of it. So that's so great.
And I think what's really nice is this is a project about nature. At no point have you said, oh, we've done this because it's so bleak, like what's going to happen to the world. You've not used the word climate crisis once. You've not used anything to do with kind of protecting the planet. It's very much like celebrating nature, because I think and I'd be curious from like a comms perspective or a kind of messaging, like, is it really important to you that this is about celebrating nature, or making people think differently about nature rather than making people think about the doom and gloom that might be to come?
I think it's celebrating nature. Definitely, it's also celebrating the subculture. And well, we were talking earlier about, like, when you say things like climate crisis, it can be quite scary and can be quite anxiety inducing for, like, Gen Z and beyond.
It can be immobilizing rather than having the desired effect of getting people to act.
I mean, everybody that I know, I mean, myself included, like, nature is a form of therapy. Nature is where you either walk or run into to reset, to shake things off, be that, your work day, a life problem, like, or something going on that you need to process. So, like, I think it should be celebrated. And even if we move like 15 people into nature, I think it's like doing its job. It's success. And I just think nature should be protected. I mean,
I also,
oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's so much research now around just the actual magic of nature. Like, literally, it fires up your imagination. There's like actual scientific studies which show that you are more imaginative when you're in nature. It does all kinds of things for your mental and physical health. It makes you feel more spiritually connected to the world. And I think it's quite bizarre that we've almost not talked about these like awesome things before. Like, it's almost the most badass thing out there, and we've just not really kind of shown it off for what it is. And then I think the other thing that's really interesting is actually when you start trying to shoehorn things down people's throats, people just disengage. And actually when you can kind of draw the kind of similarities of nature, or just weave it into the fabric of people's lives and show that it's really for them, I think that makes a massive difference. I mean, there's like 84% of people live in cities. I think this was one of the major things behind the Agency for Nature when we set it up. But then when you think about like nature as, like, if you think about a poster that you might have seen or some ad in a magazine or whatever, like, it's normally sort of rolling hills off in the far distant countryside, and that just does not relate to anyone who lives in a city, especially young people. And so, like, I think there's just this massive opportunity to kind of elevate nature to pop culture status, make people feel like it's as desirable, as aspirational, as cool, as awesome, and do it in a way that just feels relatable.
How similar or different is it to have nature as a client than, I guess, lots of people think of Mad Men, like looking after cars or cigarettes? Like, what's the kind of like the skills and the kind of contrast, like the things that you have to hero, and like the lessons, I guess, from like advertising world to like taking on the planet as your client?
I think so. Just give some more context around the project and the way the Agency for Nature worked. It was 5 agencies. So we're one of 5. And normally in ad land, agencies are head to head up against each other, fighting for the next pitch win. Not enemies, but certainly not,
competitors.
Yes. Yes, that's the word, competitors.
Not compadres.
Not compadres, like us lost Goths. But in a very sort of beautiful way, nature intertwines, right? Things grow over each other and cross-pollinate. That was our experience with the other agency teams, which was so nice because we went to this sort of mid-project summit around Christmas time. There were a few mulled wines, mulled ciders, but we said, like, here's what we're thinking for our projects. And sometimes you do presentations and ideas just get killed. It's not realistic. That's silly. The client won't like that. But there was none of that. It was so collaborative. So it's kind of like improv comedy. It was like yes and. And in terms of an experience, it was, well, I've never had it before because, well, we've not worked cross agency. Sometimes you do if you've got a really big client with, you know, above the line, but like, all that stuff. But like, yeah, having a sort of natural cohesion was really, really special. And then in terms of nature as a client, of course, like there are people representing nature, but like nature seemed up for it. Nature...
I was just thinking the only way you'd know if you had an unhappy client is if a sinkhole opened or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it was just really refreshing as well. Like the possibilities were endless and, you know, we could go mad with the art direction and stuff. And it was really fun to have free reign and just to be really creative with it and think, what would the people in this community like to see or hear? Yeah.
And also like our production partners. So we work with a company called Locate Productions who are just awesome. So when you've got the Purpose Disruptors, Locate Productions, and like 5 agencies feeding off each other, making ideas better, like honestly, I think I said this at our summit day, it made a small budget feel limitless because I think because it's nature, everyone wants to help. Everyone's like, I mean, everyone was just like, yeah, yes and. And I mean, Angus who works at Locate Productions, he came and hand delivered our zines and was like, I just wanted to see you guys. And I feel like some projects, you go through the motions, you make the work, the campaign goes live, you move on. But this campaign, if you want to call it a campaign, finished ages ago, but we're still having conversations like on WhatsApp as friends. Like it's so far beyond regular work. And it's I don't know about you, but it's my favorite piece of work that I've done in the last 6 months.
And just to add on that as well, Freya's been requesting more zines and she's been handing them out after her gigs and saying that they're going in seconds. Yeah, so really pleased that her and her fans are really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, we also
as 2 people that weren't into goth music though, have you found some new favourite bands?
Oh, definitely. We're into dark wave now.
Yeah.
So for all the listeners who've got 4 minutes and a YouTube link,
I'll put it in the comments.
Something to Remember Me by the Horrors, like top 10 most played on my chosen music platform. I don't know if I can say them, but
you can.
But yeah.
Also, when Chris Packham shared his Instagram post of the zine, he played Sisters of Mercy, This Corrosion, and I'd never heard that song before, but I'm like, this is fantastic. Yeah. Can't stop listening. So yeah, it's been fun exploration for us.
Yeah, it's been the coolest. And yeah, like it's kind of like, yeah, the rallying together, the tight timings, it will happen. And also, it's I guess why it's different is we went into the project. Normally, you get briefed on a project, and you kind of have an idea of the deliverables. So you know where your work's going and what it's going to look like. But with this, they were like, do anything, like, and then I guess that as a natural evolution, well, what evolved for us was a podcast and a zine. And if you asked us 3 months before we started, like, what we thought we'd make, we probably would have said out of home and maybe a film.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really cool as well.
Aimee, do you want to just talk a little bit about what it's like to be the person advertising nature? Like, how does that vary and differ from? I mean, I've worked with you on like promoting the Six Music Festival and things, which is obviously very different to marketing cigarettes or selling a car. Like, what does it look like when you kind of like? Do you have to leave an empty seat at the table for starters?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting question, right? It's how do you represent something that is almost voiceless and universal? And actually, just from an organizational perspective, we'll come on to the kind of marketing and how you brief it and those sorts of interesting things in a second. But also, what's really fascinating is there's a whole movement now of bringing nature's voice into spaces, and something that seemed very radical and not very done 5 years ago. Now we're finding, for example, there's like a whole movement, Lawyers for Nature, who are helping organizations bring nature onto the board of companies. And we actually have signed up a nature representative to our advisory board at Purpose Disruptors. And what's fascinating about that is it's not necessarily like, here's a criteria as to what would nature think, but it's actually more about like, how do you embody principles of nature? So being adaptable, being collaborative, kind of open-minded and centered, and slowness, and those sorts of things that like are kind of at odds with, you know, a profit-driven hyper-capitalist company. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's less about almost having this really defined list of things that you need to do because, you know, well, we need to kind of, you know, justify it from a nature perspective in this way. But it's like, how can you embody nature better? And so then from an agency for nature perspective, I mean, this whole thing has been designed just with nature at its core. So it's like from the collaboration aspect through to, you know, there's no brand involvement. Like it's literally, the brief is help young people fall in love with nature. So there's not like a logo. There's not it's more just, expressions of creativity to help people connect to nature, which is a very interesting way of doing things. Like no one does that. Everyone's like, I need branding and a call to action and all this messaging around it. Sorry, what you were gonna?
No, I was gonna say, like, how do you measure the impact it's had? Because you can't go, we've sold 10,000 more cars. Like, do you have like ways of knowing? Like not just with this zine, but just generally, like, do you know from like, so since you've started the projects, like how that's hit?
Yes. So there's a few different ways, but it's interesting, right? Because it's not a straightforward job. It's not a straightforward project. So, and we're doing things kind of new and for the first time. So there's a few different things. I mean, there's just the sort of straightforward, like, this is how many people have seen the work and have kind of reacted or, you know, engaged with it in one way or another. I mean, sort of, you know, you can go into like the marketing metrics, which I'm not going to bore listeners with. But I think the most interesting thing is like what we're trying to do is mindset shift, right? Like, how do you get people in the street to think nature is cooler than I previously thought it was? And that is something that we sort of are surveying basically. So like, and we were kind of putting that into the mixer, getting feedback back from people as to like, has this ad, has this piece of content, has this thing that you've seen made you think differently about nature? So we are putting that in to testing and we'll find that out. But anecdotally, we know that people are like massively resonating with the work. I mean, literally, like one of the executions, was a football campaign. And like, you're like, what? How like football, nature? How does that work? But the concept's extra time with nature. And essentially it's this billboard campaign featuring amateur footballers in Derby who were literally lying on the pitch, staring at like daisies and birds that are found around the pitch, with the like hilarious taglines, so like eyes on the cloud lad, or caught bird watching again, with a ball that's sort of flying past him or whatever. And the reaction that has got on social media is nuts. Like, we're talking like 300,000 people have seen the video. Like multiple comments from lads, you know, being like, this is quite jokes, like this is really cool, this is really interesting. And it's like, so I think this novelty factor of seeing very different ways in which you can communicate nature, we're seeing people just react in an incredibly positive way.
It's interesting. When I spoke to Frances Fox, she said it was the lads at Wireless Festival who are some of her favourite people to chat to when they come in and get a temporary tattoo or some bioglitter. She said they're the most curious because they've maybe not delved in enough and they felt maybe embarrassed at first, and then they just want to know more and more. And I think it's really interesting to know that when there's not stories out in the world about climate justice or nature or any of these big topics, that, I mean, I've seen plenty of kick it out campaigns in football about racism. I don't think I've ever seen, there are some nature related football organisations that are a bit like Earth%, which is Brian Eno's organisation, which is trying to get 1% or more of income from like record sales and ticket sales and things to go. Also, I was going to ask, are they kind of part of your orbit of, because they've got nature as an artist, haven't they? And that's, well, I assumed there was an overlap, and I actually didn't, when I was doing my research, didn't click.
No, yeah. So we actually had Brian Eno speak at our last summit at Purpose Disruptors. He is a wonderful human, isn't he? Yeah. Bloody hell, what a wise man. And then so Kathy, who's the founder of Earth%, she actually we had a little like a board of nature avengers, like basically people in the wider sphere, from Nadeem, who's been mentioned, who's this amazing wildlife presenter and bird watcher, and set up the first black and brown bird watching group for black and brown people, because they're so unrepresented in nature. And like, also it's just quite dangerous for a lot of people to be sort of in the middle of nature. You know, he was telling us about police phoning up, police being phoned on his mates and stuff when he was just in the middle of the Peak District. I mean, it's outrageous. But anyway, so we have like a kind of ecosystem of people that we've been working with along the way, and Earth% very much are one of those organisations doing awesome things.
What do you all think that the average musician, creative, maybe just a music fan that's got a job that's got nothing to do with any of these industries, what do you think they could learn from some of the things that the kind of the processes you've been through, if they are interested in changing things, not necessarily even with climate? Is there anything that you've kind of like foundationally think that might be useful for people to know?
There's a couple of things. I mean, from a nature specific perspective, honestly, getting out in nature more. I know that sounds so simple, but actually when you look at how much time we might think that we're a nation of nature lovers, and we might think that we spend time in nature, but I think the average,
we all watch David Attenborough.
We all watch David Attenborough, but it's nuts. The average time that the average time that someone in the UK spends in nature, the average adult, is like 4.5 minutes or something a day, versus over 8 hours on screens. And then it's also this thing about like quality, not quantity. So we might just be running through nature, or on a walk chatting, but actually like unplugging your headphones, going and sitting down somewhere and like slowing down and just like listening to birdsong or water, or trying to see some random bug that's crawling out the cracks of the pavement. I think tuning in like is so powerful, and encouraging others to do the same. So like that would be number one thing, like finding time to do that. Is the more that we can get people to do that and feel the benefits of that and just reconnect themselves, rewild themselves, actually then other environmental benefits are like naturally kind of come into play. And so there's multiple studies, like the more people love and are connected to nature, there's this like horrible phrase, the more pro-environmental behaviors they exhibit. Basically, the more they're up for like recycling or into just other parts of the climate movement. So yeah, so get into nature, slow down, tune in. I think that's my main one, actually.
That's your main one. Good.
I think, well, for us as well, it was just fantastic to be approached by Agency for Nature. And I guess for other industries, if there's like the equivalent, it's fantastic, I guess, for advertising to have Purpose Disruptors, Agency for Nature, to like give us the facility to like create work for nature, as we've spoken about. And yeah, I wonder if there's obviously must be similar stuff going on for different industry stuff. And
I quite like the idea what Bakers for Nature might be like, or what like
yes,
like what are the like there's a lot. I've seen lots of things in the fashion world, and my brain is already like I was distracted thinking just about all the different like the
I think
but
also,
it's so true. Oh, sorry, you go, Hadders.
I think also for me, like similar to your point, Aimee, of just like we're at this. Well, I don't know about you on the call, but I feel like at this point in time, like mid to end March, we're just about coming out of hibernation. Of this time when like the days are short, I think the clocks are about to change in a week or so, right? I think go out and meet up with your mates outside, because there's this statistic, I don't know how much exactly the number, but we are our most honest and authentic as ourselves when we're walking side by side with a friend. So it's like, if you want to have a difficult conversation, like don't choose the pub, don't choose a coffee shop, don't choose somewhere where, you know, it's bright lights and a bit too noisy. Like go into nature, have that conversation, and then you'll get all the other passive benefits as well of like, well, being out in nature with one of your closest friends or well, anything else. But yeah, just like the seasons are literally changing. Like it's the perfect time to get out there. It's going to be light till hopefully 7 p.m. tonight. Like, I'm excited about it. Yeah, just get out there and feel it, like get muddy.
To your point on other industries adjacent or whatnot, I mean, there are wonderful organizations doing interesting things. So like Creatives for Climate is a cool space where there's different kind of briefs and basically connect with other folks, other people who, you know, kind of try and find them out. Community is actually everything in this space as well. And as soon as you sort of can find other people who want to do something that helps the planet, society, people, that's half the battle, I think. But I was thinking there were like various different briefs out there as well. But it's really interesting. So many people have come to the forum and been like, I really want to be part of the Agency for Nature. How can I offer my creative skills? What can I do? And unfortunately, this is sort of like a seasonal thing. You know, we work with major agencies because it's as much about trying to shift the industry and also put that work in the world that helps kind of people connect to nature. But I think that the world needs more of this stuff. And so I'm sure if it, you know, create it and find a way to get it out there in the world, because there's no shortness of people who kind of want to see more of it.
So 5 years from now, what do you hope will have changed so that at least we can be on a better path to 2050? Like, is it about big companies decarbonizing? Is it about people changing their habits? Like, all of the data I've ever seen, like plastic straws and paper straws is a tiny difference, whereas not ordering half of our wardrobes from China, from factories that are polluting, probably is a, like, what are the big things that you hope will change 5 years from now that projects like this are kind of purposely disrupting?
For me, like on a personal level, as individuals, I'd like to see a lot more accountability. So I think everybody loves nature, but then a lot of people sort of look the other way. So I'd like to see people saying like, look, I love nature. I run in nature. I get coffees in nature. I mean, myself included, I'm going to give X amount of my time to, keeping it as best as it can be. I think at our summit day back last year, I spoke about, by the way, I love running. I'm an avid runner. It is my identity on a page. One of the best runs I did in COVID was I took no headphones, just my shoes, my kit, myself, and a plastic bag, and every bit of litter I saw, I picked up. And that was in a time where I was obsessed with running faster, like times, like what people are going to think, because you will see each other on Strava and all the rest of it. But that was the most fulfilled that I got. So even little initiatives like that at an individual level, I'd love to see coming into play. And also like at a bigger legal level, I mean, this might not be everyone's opinion. I would like to see harder laws to say like, you need to reach X, because then people will start listening. Because I feel like sometimes we set a goal and then we don't achieve it, so we just move the date.
There's no prosecutions for ecocide, and ecocide is a word that exists because it is a crime to damage and kill nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes words are important, but putting those words into action in law seem like I heard someone from Client Earth speak recently, and the work that they're doing is just really inspiring to think that they are using their legal skills to do exactly that, of shift the law.
Oh, Client.
Anyway, sorry, it's not meant to be me answering
No.
questions.
I think Client Earth are absolutely amazing. They're one of the most incredible organizations doing, really tricky but imaginative stuff. They're being very creative. I think for me, like I want people to take a second now to like imagine what kind of future that we want. I think we're so on the treadmill, just going through the motions of life, being bombarded by the news cycle, feeling like we have to keep up with the grind, that we don't take a second to really stop and think about what kind of future we want to build, and how we do that. And I think that's a lot of what we're dreaming this stuff up as we go along. We dreamt up the Agency for Nature, and here it is. And I feel like, so in 5 years' time, like, let's be radical. We know we need things to change pretty significantly, and it's less about growth and endless profit and whatnot, but like stability, community, connection, these sorts of things. And so I think for me it's like, can we build businesses where we've got nature and well-being that are in the heart of them? Like, what does that look like? Can we reorient what it is to live a good life? So we're less about consumerism and wealth and more and status, but actually where we're, the pinnacle of living a good life is connection to other human beings and more time in nature and doing the things that we actually genuinely love deep down. I think like, I want a bit more of that in 5 years. No mean feat, but come on guys, we can do it.
Yeah. But wanting more community should be a really basic thing that everyone wants.
Totally.
Like that feels like, and interestingly, I should probably put in some drinking game for this podcast. Every time word community is mentioned, do a shot, because it's one of the most mentioned words throughout the series. Might be just my choice of guests are people that are community builders, not kind of purely driven by capitalist desire to create more wealth. Anyone else for anything else before we log off and go sit in a pub garden? Because isn't that basically the takeaway from this episode?
Yeah, I think just something that didn't quite kind of come up in the conversation, but just something to mention is like how, what's the thing that I was thinking of? Like creativity is the lifeblood of everything. And so I think another thing that's just really, I don't know, important is to like not lose that creative spirit. And that's why this project has also been really fun, and why it's been really amazing kind of connecting into different subcultures, because it's like making things fun and playful and as creative as possible. I don't know, we need things that draw people in and bring people with us. Anyway, yeah, I'll stop there, but just...
I think my takeaway from all of this is that music magazines are really important and really exciting. And I can see each time you've talked about making a physical print product and to know how important it is, like the big shift from this $1 trillion industry away from supporting independent print titles, the kind of media industry, the amount of money that gets spent and goes straight into the bank account of Mark Zuckerberg and Google and Elon Musk. Felt like myself vomiting saying his name. And the idea that there's so much money in that bloodstream, in that ecosystem, like it's really kind of hit home that like you're in one of the most powerful industries, and that so much of that money is propping up like right-wing newspapers that are churning out climate disinformation, and like Joe Rogan getting 250 million from Spotify. And the other drinking game in this should probably be to down a shot every time I say Joe Rogan and Spotify, because I keep thinking about how much money that's been extracted from the music industry and from the advertising industry to pay him all that money, and yet people then have to go around kind of batting back his disinformation, and that feels consciously like not the thing that when you're advertising.
To add to that, like at the start, I mean, one way we interpreted the initial brief was broadly, how do you get young people off their phones, which is kind of the ultra example of digital. And our solution has been the ultra example of something that is crafted, is tactile, and is like a physical thing. And yeah, like to your Joe Rogan point, like there are so many bands that I loved growing up which probably don't exist because the financial backing has not been there and they've just fallen off in a way. I mean, I don't know if the Wombats and the Cribs and Pigeon Detectives are still alive and kicking, but I feel like I'd rather back those and buy their merch than, you know, give it all over to,
So my last question for you, I did say it was last question about 3 questions ago. Would you rather now become a climate activist, a magazine editor, or a goth?
That's a good question.
I think a goth, seems.
I think a goth who maybe dips into magazine editing. Like, maybe if we become, when the next person has the next 6 pints of Guinness with goths, maybe we would do well imparting some knowledge that we picked up along the way.
Some light climate active.
Yeah, and a little bit of design layout feedback as well. Yeah. But I think heavily goth. Yeah.
Aimee, which were winning for you?
I mean, I was thinking, can I just be a goth that is also a magazine editor and a climate activist? That's cheating, isn't it?
It is cheating, but you can cheat. That's fine. Well, I will see you all at a horrors gig.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely, at the front.
Well, hopefully you have learned a few things from that episode. I feel like I've better understood the ways in which you can protest or push for change. I think push for change is maybe a better wording. And I think there's something in what Purpose Disruptors and the Agency for Nature is doing that I feel like could be applied to almost any type of change that you're trying to achieve. Definitely feels like a lot of things in the world are going to need community and coordinated collective action over the coming months and years. And if an industry as big and as profitable, making or spending $1 trillion every year as the advertising industry can do it, then I don't think there's any reason why the music industry can't. As I mentioned, you can get the PDF of the magazine online. I don't know if you can get hold of print copies. I know that Freya's had some at her shows. She's been on tour with John Cooper Clarke, the legendary punk poet. And I think that the radio show, if I haven't already whet your appetite enough and you haven't already downloaded it, is definitely worth your time. All of that will be in the show notes or on drowningsound.org. I guess all that's left to say, as this is quite a long episode, and if you made it to the end, if you could take 20 seconds, a minute, to go on to iTunes or to the Apple Podcast Store, whatever you call it, and do a very quick review of this podcast, that would be great, because when I last checked, there was one review and it's from 9 years ago when I piloted a podcast idea, and someone kindly wrote a nice review, but it just seems really weird that the only review that you can see, because it sort of shows you the most recent one, is that old. And if you're enjoying this series and you feel like supporting my work, you can upgrade your subscription to the newsletter. There's also like a one-off donate button as well, a tip jar button I think it is, on the drowningsound.org website. I'd really appreciate it. Obviously you can hopefully hear the amount of time and energy and effort that goes into researching guests, kind of getting the questions structured in a way so I can help tell their story and hopefully provide you with lots of food for thought. I've got some guests coming up. If you're listening to this in the past, they'll already be available. If they're listening to this in the future, they'll already be available. Going to be chatting to the band Stealing Sheep about their new record label and their approach to their creative process, which is just really fascinating. Also, Zoe Scarman has agreed to speak to me. She is such an expert in fandoms, working at some of the highest levels in kind of the corporate and sports world, and I think there's loads that the music industry can learn, and musicians, and just being a fan, like all the cool stuff that could be coming if you're a fan from other parts of the creative spectrum. I have been your host, Sean Adams. There has been some funny sounds from the Descript sound library this time. The normal music for this show is now available by Sound Mirror. If you look up on Bandcamp, I'll drop a link to it in the description. And I'm going to duck answering the question of how to define goth music, but I'll definitely do that on a Q&A at some point. I feel like I really need to think about it, because my gut reaction is that it's so broad that it can span from the kind of Leonard Cohen end of Nick Cave right the way through to kind of like pastel goth, which someone described St. Vincent as, and obviously the much more traditional goth, which is your kind of the Cures and Bauhaus and things that are in the middle. But I think the spine and skeleton that runs through it all has a certain DNA which is more than melancholy. It's sort of relishing the darkness. But I'll give that a proper answer on a Q&A episode. Thanks so much for listening to, I think, the longest episode of this podcast so far. Please give me any feedback if these are way too long. If you'd much rather I spent longer kind of editing them down. I've barely edited this conversation, which was aiming to be 40 minutes and turned into pretty much an hour, I think. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.